Hello all, this is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video I want to talk to you about why the Millennials and Generation Z might be the most successful academics yet. So if you don't know me, I'm an associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There were so many people that helped me out that I want to pay the favor forward and help you out. So I created this sort of sharing economy proofreading platform. That's what the whole reciprocity thing is, where you can get feedback on your work. You could check that out. And as well as I'm doing these YouTube videos to give you hope in when you are doing research. So we often hear about millennials being very entitled and lazy. And in my experience, we do see some of that sometimes. When you're in the classroom, you do see some people that are very, they're probably just, they think that they deserve a lot more than what they should. However, in my own personal experience, that is only a small group of the millennials. That's about half of them. There is another half that is absolutely wonderful and that are making significant changes in our world. So for me personally, I'm very excited about the next generation of millennials and the Generation Z in terms of academic research. They are truly doing some wonderful things in terms of what they could possibly do. And what I'm going to talk about here is just some sort of general trends that I've noticed. And again, this is not based on academic research in any sort of way. And these are stereotypes and generalizations. So you could take it as you wish, but I'm very hopeful in terms of what's going to happen in the next 20 to 30 years because of this generation of millennials and Generation Z. They're just really cool. The Generation Z is the next generation after the millennials. All right. So in terms of these millennials, a group of these millennials are really concerned with authenticity and making a difference than simply just publishing research for the sake of academic fame or accumulating resources for the sake of academic fame. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's what a lot of people did previously in different generations, in my generations and, the baby boomers and whatnot. That's not what I'm suggesting, but they do appear there is a real strong cultural trend towards things of academic or just authenticity. So treating people as if they're real and not really being concerned about all the other things that sort of come around with this world in terms of social status and, dealing with all the other things. And in terms of academics and in terms of research, you really need to have that mindset of just being as authentic and real as possible and focus on the particular idea and not focused on all the other crap that happens around it, because that stuff really eats you up. And the more that is a cultural thing and you grow up with other people that are not concerned with all the financial resources or having bigger and better houses and stuff like that, the better off you're going to be in terms of a person of dealing with the academic world, because the academic world has this sort of weird thing that not a lot of places have, although maybe entrepreneurship has this, where it just takes a long time. So you can put in a tremendous amount of effort and action, but it takes a long time to get to the point where you have a particular outcome that is successful. And to deal with that, you need things that, not only about delay of gratification, of sort of persisting at something for a long time and sort of working through the tough things, but you also need a culture or a group of people that are going to be there for you and don't really care about all this other stuff that surrounds this world. And that group of millennials and the Generation Z, you really see that there's a lot of people that truly do care about authenticity and just being real and not really caring about all the other stuff that goes along with it. And that really does help you out in terms of dealing with a lot of the emotional stuff that you don't necessarily see in many other generations until this generation. I think maybe part of that has been dealing with the financial crisis, right? So the Great Depression folks, people that grew up in the Great Depression, they very much had this sort of saving mindset and really sort of focused on sort of what is true and real. But then, subsequent generations started to focus on and many other things in terms of consumption, for example, rather than thinking about the sort of real things and focusing on activities that truly do matter. All right. So, one thing that's really cool that I've noticed with millennials, um, obviously there's some of them that are lazy and entitled and stuff, but there's this really cool group of individuals with millennials that really, really do care about things, and they work hard at the things that they care about. And it's really cool to see this group of, this new generation sort of coming up from the ground up, focusing on things that they truly care about and focusing on things that matter in this world. And I know that everybody has their own definition of the things that matter to them, and they sort of have different sort of viewpoints and what that means. But you really do see a lot more passion with this group of millennials and Generation Z that you just don't necessarily see before. And you need that to continue on and to push forward through many of the issues that you deal with as an academic, right? You just need to be passionate. Just like an entrepreneur, you really need to be passionate to continue and to persist for 10, 20 years at the particular thing that you're doing. Now, another thing that's really cool is that millennials are extremely connected and they understand online social dynamics. So me, when I was growing up, I didn't have computers. That was kind of a new thing when people started really doing the sort of, mass computer adoption in the year that I was in university, or when I first started university, where it was just becoming really mass across the board, where everybody was being connected, not only having home computers, but you can go and get computers everywhere. I still remember when cell phones became a thing, and some people in my class, actually in my university class, started to get cell phones, and it was kind of cool to see that. So growing up with that, and then going into the sort of Facebook years, right, where it became very popular, sort of social stuff became popular online. A lot of these millennials in the Generation Z are really focused, and they understand sort of online social dynamics, which is a lot different than what you see in the generations before. It's just because we haven't been exposed to them. So our generation, my generation, and the ones that are older than me, it was not a thing. So, in terms of dealing with, getting information, for example, in terms of, there's a lot of people I remember growing, and there's still academics that do this, but I remember seeing a lot of academics or researchers that would type like this, because they didn't learn how to type. It wasn't a thing. Like when I was growing up in high school, that was an extra course that you had to take, and if you didn't take that typing course, it's a challenge, right? It's difficult to do that. So I was fortunate enough that I listened to somebody and actually took a typing course, because they said that computers were going to be a big thing. This was still on typewriters. That's how crazy it is, right? So your generation, the millennial generation, is really understanding this whole computer online thing that we didn't have before. And it's becoming more complicated and more sort of complex to understand these dynamics and what it means to sort of build a social following, for example, or what it means to reach out to people online or be trustworthy of people online. When I was growing up, and I know this seems really like, this old fuddy-duddy guy. No, but it really wasn't that long ago where people were extremely not trusting of people online. Because there is sketchy people online, and we know that, right? Like that is not a thing, but there's a lot of real people that are normal, that do really nice and amazing things that are online as well. And those people that are catching on to that and sort of understand that there's lots of people that are helpful online, they have an advantage, right? And so with the people that are starting to build a tribe or build a group of individuals online that they can interact with, in terms of the academic world, that really helps them out. That's a tremendous influence. That's part of this whole reciprocity project, right? Is to build a community of like-minded people that are dealing with the issues of research and being as real and open as possible with all of that kind of stuff. But helping us sort of deal with this as a group, and to know that you're not unusual and weird in any sort of way, and we're all dealing with this together. And understanding that you could do this online is, this is an amazing thing. And I think millennials get it a lot more than generation. So right now, for my generation, and sort of up. Me doing this kind of stuff, this whole YouTubing thing, this is really, really risky. This is a really kind of crazy thing. But your generation that's watching this, right? So probably it's the mid 20s and sort of generation that's watching this right now. I mean, they get it. This is kind of the thing, right? But anybody else? Can you imagine if there was like a 75-year-old that was doing this, on YouTube? It would seem really unusual. So, and as we sort of go into this, for me, being 40, it's pretty unusual, right? It is kind of a strange thing to do this kind of stuff. In fact, I've got this kind of group of friends that I hang out with. We kind of exercise together. And I was telling them that I'm a YouTuber, and this was like 4 months ago. I sort of let that cat out of the bag, and people thought it was like, they kind of giggled, right? It's kind of weird. But your generation, the younger generation, get it and what it means to actually build a community and why it actually matters. And so the last thing that I think is really important, and I'm starting to see this a lot in terms of the academic conferences that I go to, is that millennials are not scared of computing technology, not just sort of the social dynamic stuff that happens, but as well as the computing technology that we see, right? So they are starting to leverage tremendously the computing resources that we have, that we couldn't have before. And this computing resources are just going crazy. And people are starting to pick this up, and they're starting to learn things like Python, for example, our Stata languages, all these or statistical languages, all sorts of really cool things is becoming sort of bred into them in terms of this is a possibility of doing this kind of stuff. And people are starting to realize that this is really cool and important things. And it's wonderful to see this. So I think that, honestly, in terms of these sort of general trends and the things that I'm seeing, the world of academics is going to change extremely rapidly in the next 10 to 15 years. It's going to be so much more different than what we see right now. There might actually be a lot more sort of this online interaction thing, but there also is going to be an explosion in terms of research that's basically unparalleled in terms of what we can possibly do. I'm already starting to see that in the academic journal articles, where people are doing, computing things that it was physically impossible even 5 years ago, like looking at millions and millions of observations, billions of observations of things, where like that is just unbelievable that we can do that at this moment. And people are really starting to embrace that there is real things that are going on. And the other cool thing, that there's this trend towards gathering more data on us. And I know that seems a little scary to some of us, but the problem is not necessarily that our data is being tracked. The problem is just observing any sort of trends in that, right? So as we store more data and we sort of accumulate more data, it just becomes overwhelming, and it's really difficult to sort of look at this kind of stuff. So some people are embracing, machine learning, which seems like a scary thing, but it's really not. So statistics at the end of the day, and all these kind of things that we're embracing that is becoming more important. In fact, when I was going to school, and I know it seems like ages ago, but it wasn't, right? So when I was doing my engineering degree, my master's engineering degree, people were talking about how data mining was like, oh, that's dirty. You shouldn't be doing data mining. But now it's like wide open. Like, this is a cool thing that you should be doing, is data mining, because it's an important sort of thing of looking at data, especially with large amounts of data. So these millennials are starting to understand this kind of stuff, and Generation Z is starting to understand this kind of stuff, that this is becoming increasingly more important, and it's becoming more part of our economy around the world. And it's not just North America, it's not just Europe, but it's like, continents like Africa, for example, South America, like many of these many of these countries, many of the people that are in these countries are just doing amazing, wonderful things. And they're getting access like you wouldn't believe that they could, that they couldn't get access to even 5 years ago in terms of this. So these videos, again, these silly little YouTube videos are being watched by people in Africa. And those people that didn't get access to this kind of stuff because that, they were locked out of these opportunities, because that they weren't located in North America or some European school or whatnot. I mean, like, it is going to be bananas in terms of what we can possibly do in the next 15 years. So I am absolutely ecstatic in terms of the sort of changes that are going to happen and in terms of the discoveries that we're going to be making. And it's only going to start speeding up as we continue to sort of leverage these technologies that we have. And as the next generation start to become more comfortable with using these things and it becomes more central part of what we're doing. So things like being more connected socially, online, not like in person. It's a weird thing. It hasn't changed, but online, being more socially connected is going to make a huge difference, as well as sort of the computing power that we have and the changes that's happening as a result of that in terms of our society, in terms of our culture, and not sort of focusing on things that don't necessarily matter, and people don't really care about. I am ecstatic in terms of what you guys are going to do and what we're going to do going forward. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.